Right. Welcome, Winning Ways show fans, to what should be a very, very interesting show. And start a little early because I'd like to just get in what I'd like to say and see as far as what's going to happen. Because remember, a week from now, we're going to know what the business rescue practitioner has had to say about how this business should be run. There are all types of rumors out there, and whether it's got an opportunity of making money. There are all types of rumors out there. Betfred might get involved, Rion Duplessis, this one, that one, the other one. I'm sure Mary Oppenheimer daughters who have funded this whole show will have a lot to say about it. From my point of view, I would like to see racing in a nutshell. I'm going to give you, hello, Black Swan, nice to see you. I'm going to give you my synopsis in a few minutes of what's going to happen, what I think should happen. This is a personal opinion. I've been in racing all my life, should have some sort of idea of what this business is all about. And the first thing that should happen, one race club, one racing body running racing in South Africa. So Kenilworth Racing, Phumelela, Gold Circle have got to join up. The second thing that's got to happen is the intellectual property has got to be the property of that racing club, which means that they own the lot, okay? And that means you have all the offshoots. Good evening, Saeed. Nice to have you on the show as well. And we'll carry on from there. All the offshoots of the business should be, and I made some notes here because I think that it's very important that we do this chronologically. Charles Faull is going to give us an idea of what he thinks. The NHRA should purely be a licensing body and run the stipendiary board. So they should police racing and run the stipendiary board. The stipendiary board should be based in Johannesburg, with all the stipes based in Johannesburg, except for one stipe in each of the provinces where you race, each of the racing areas. Cape Town, Durban, PE, Johannesburg should each have a stipe. The rest should be a board which rotates on race day, and they run it from a virtual studio, which they have at their offices. The stud book should go to the Thoroughbred Breeders Association. They should run the stud book, and they should collect the fees for it and make sure that the stud book's kept up to date. Now, Charles Faull has a very important part to play here because, as you heard last week, the Arrow organization, Action Racing Online, give them all the information as far as the pedigrees are concerned. GH Bloodstock, thanks. Right, okay. Don't worry about my bet with Hollywood. That's coming later. We've got to first hear what happens with the Wigan appeal before we move any further. So the NHRA should be a policing body, and that's it. The laboratory should be outsourced so that we know that there's no Faniakere. I know the problems I've had with that laboratory. It costs a fortune to run, and it will cost us a lot less. We'd probably save in the region of 10 million rand a year if we didn't run a laboratory ourselves, if we just outsourced all our samples, which it shows how badly the laboratory's done, because in the lockdown, they could have been doing all types of testing for the government or all types of operation and making sure that they were kept busy and making a lot of money. They made nothing. So then that's the NHRA. Teletrack should be jacked up completely. We all agree that you've got to put someone in charge who knows racing and knows racing intricately. He's got to understand that it is the marketing arm of your racing industry, and it has got to market South African racing. And South African racing must be number one. All the other sideshows have got to be number 2, 3, and 4. You've got to have programs which are informative and interesting in the off time, and you've got to make a budget available to run those programs. So the bet types have got to be narrowed down, especially the soccer bet types. The soccer bet types, there are far too many of them, and you're just diluting all the pools. You want to have mega pools as far as each of your bet types are concerned, or certainly big pools as far as your bet types are concerned. I believe that we should have rolling jackpots on the races in South Africa. We should have a pick six, because a pick six is always a big payer. You should have couplings in the pick six should apply. And certainly the jackpots, you can have no couplings. That's fine, but you only got 4 races to go. But I'm actually in the favor of having couplings on everything. So Teletrack has got to not only become your marketing arm, but it's got to be an information service. It's got to be a service that puts out good information. You've got to have lots of magazine programs. You employ 2 or 3 or 4 people to make magazine programs. Andrew Bond's a perfect person. You can employ him to make magazine programs on racing, South African racing. So that's Teletrack. Racing, you've got to divide racing into 5 different subsections. The tracks, okay, they are vitally important, and there should be one track manager who runs all the tracks in South Africa. He has sub-managers in each center, and he travels and does the tracks. That's got to happen. Publications all fall under one roof. That's the racing publications. They all fall under one roof. If there are going to be other spin-off publications, but I think that they should all be available to the public. You've got to get together with your man, Charles Faull. He's got to get together with all the publications, and they've got to be try and use them as one publication or one set of publications. So everyone should be have the same aim. You can have different tipsters working on publications. That's no problem. But I really believe that form grids have got to be an integral part of it, or the Black Book Racing Book, or any one of them, or all of them together. And yeah, the starts have got to go off on time. I mentioned that last time. You've got to have barrier trials. Barrier trials keep people informed. And the barrier trials should be properly run like they are in Hong Kong. You've got to ride horses out with their hands. You're allowed to carry a whip. You want to give a horse a smack or two, that's fine. But the horse has got to be ridden out absolutely to the finish. You've got to have sectional timing. You've got to weigh the horses, and you've got to do barrier trials properly. And you've got to have experts dissecting the barrier trials. As far as the training is concerned, you've got to be able to make available to the public training workouts, which means that if people are going to work their horses, big horses especially, in gallops, you're allowed to go and film the gallops and put them up on your Teletrack channel. So all those things have got to fall into place. But basically what you've got to have in this business is you've got to have racing is run by one body with a board of directors who encompass everyone. So the board of directors make all the decisions. Then you have CEOs or managers in each of the other facets, like Teletrack, like the racing, the actual racing, which includes handicapping, programming. There's a program's a disaster. I was speaking to a trainer, a big trainer, yesterday in Durban, and he's trying to get horses ready for the Gold Cup. They put on a 6-horse plate race for all these horses to get ready for Gold Cup race day, and they scrapped it. But they run a 7-horse race, which is a lower division race. That makes no sense. You've got to give the guys a chance to program their horses. So programming should fall under one place. Enough from me. Charles Faull's the man we want to talk to. So let's see what Charles has got to say. Good evening, Charles. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks, James. And how are you?
I'm extremely well, thank you. I hope everyone can hear you, because let me tell you, you made a big impression last week. A lot of people speak very highly of you now. I didn't know you were so popular.
I don't know about popular, but yes, I've had an amazing amount of positive feedback, particularly from professionals within the industry. So it's very encouraging. I think we're on the right track.
Okay, well, the track ended last week, and we're going to go straight into it because, you know, the shorter we can keep it, the better, but we want to discuss everything. The track ended last week. Let's go forward now and see what you would do and how you would run racing from here on in. We got to understand that by next Friday, this time, we're going to have a blueprint. We're going to have a report back from the business administrator, Mr. Evans. He's going to tell us what he thinks. I have no doubt that he's going to tell us that the business is viable. Okay, let's agree that the business is viable. How do we now work from here?
Okay, James, can I firstly, before we say anything, I just want to say I missed a horse. Last week I mentioned 4 great horses, and I missed one out. There were 5. That horse, One World, you know, he, as a mature horse, he only got his right distance once. That was in the Met, and he beat the best.
Yeah.
So I would just like to mention that I left him out.
Is he on your books as a stallion?
Sorry, is he?
Is he on your books as a stallion?
No, he's not. But
okay.
He certainly was that was a great performance. I mean, fair and square, he beat Rainbow Bridge. We know Warm wasn't at his best, and we know Hardy had problems. But to not mention him with the other four was wrong. I'd just like to correct it. Okay.
Okay, so now let me lead on from there. Okay, great horses make racing great. Let's assume the business administrator comes forward and says the business is viable. Do we then immediately try and form one racing body to run racing in South Africa? Amalgamate Kenilworth Racing, Gold Circle, and Phumelela?
Of course. I keep harping to the two great successes, Hong Kong and Japan. Japan is run by the JRA, and Hong Kong is run by the Hong Kong Jockey Club. And they have total control over everything. And they have the interests of everybody. They do everything for the greater good. So we need to combine. Obviously, we've got to have a separate breed society, people who look after the breeders and the breed society's interests. You've got to have your regulator, the Jockey Club, which I think must be a very strong, autonomous body. The NHRA has been completely lobotomized by we know who tried to, I don't know what, he tried to cost-cut everything. He destroyed everything in the process. So you must have a strong NHRA which is autonomous and which regulates and controls everything.
Okay, so I just want to ask you about the NHA, because I've just given a little synopsis myself. And should the NHRA stay in the form that it is, or should it become a regulatory policing body and get rid of all the rest of it? Like the stud book, I believe, should be run by yourselves and the TBA. Do all the pedigrees.
You're right. I think the breeders should run the stud book and the breed society should run it. Now, this is very important. Form is not looking for a job. We've built this because we've tried.
We accept that. Okay.
We've tried very hard to unify into a systemic solution for racing. When you have institutionalized failure, it needs systemic solutions. So I didn't look to Japan and Hong Kong. I was pleasantly surprised to see that they were working examples of what we had been pleading for since the beginning of the 80s. But we have to systemize everything in such a way as it works, properly, that there's cohesion between everybody, and not just all the professionals within the industry, but the general public. We've got to start, and that's what look at Wikipedia. I mean, it's now the 8th wonder of the world. I mean, how many people do you know who don't use Wikipedia? There isn't a student of anything on this planet that doesn't use Wikipedia daily. So the concept of Wikipedia is you go in, you have a panel, you type a word, a name, whatever, and bang, come the most remarkable sources of information, all created by experts. So if racing wants to solve its problem, it needs a systemized solution which connects all the independent bodies. That's the stud book, the operators and the race results, the control of racing, the NHRA and their decisions, and of course the general public. I mean, and their questions and needs. I've got to make this point, James, is that in about the late 1990s, when we were really in trouble, the newspapers dropped the racing page. We had to start buying a page to do the race go. I had a very close friend who I grew up with, went to school with, who had a powerful position on the board of the Argus and the Times and the editorial content. And I went to see him and I said, please, what can we do? And he said, listen, Charles, we have done a survey. We do it monthly, marketing survey of what our readers are interested in. And right now, racing rates alongside the other boutique sports like squash and badminton and water polo in terms of the interest in the minds of our readers. And on top of it, he said, he pulled out a pile of letters. Look at all these letters to the editor accusing racing of dishonesty and crookery. He said, we've published 3 of these letters on the letters to the editor's page. We've never received a reply from racing. They just ignored it. And it was all directed towards Kenilworth. So another body which I believe racing desperately needs is a marketing body, headed by a marketing czar. And it needs to be somebody who deeply understands racing. And that marketing body must be responsible for the perception management of racing. There's a science, the science of the beholder's share or the observer effect in sport, in art, in everything. The observer brings to the act of observing his personal perception. We as humans, we all have the same surname, human being, but being human doesn't mean we all have the same perceptions, the same cultures. We do not see the world as it is. We see it as we are, as we've been conditioned to see it. So the goal of marketing is perception management. And the principal goal of marketing is to create demand for a service or a product, to educate the observer through cognitive development, to reconcile his perception with reality, and to engender in him a love or a passion for something. And if we had, I'm just adding this body, an information center, a marketing center that's responsible daily for driving out to wherever we want, editors of magazines, to everybody, to the public, to the over and above being able to type in and get answers to the questions you have from a website. You need somebody also driving perception management into the marketplace. And so I do think racing needs a central, and it can be an extension of the Jockey Club, but personally, I think it needs to be an independent body, and it needs to be managed by proper marketing people with marketing minds who understand that marketing is about creating demand and managing perceptions. And it's a daily job. You don't do it 2 weeks before the July and 2 weeks before the Queen's Plate and 2 weeks before the you do it daily, 24 hours a day. You're on the go, driving public perception, correcting misperceptions, ensuring that you're not sending out the wrong messages. And when they are going out,
you're breaking up.
Them the truth.
You're breaking up, Charles.
Aren't going to go away with the conspiracy of silence.
Charles, you're
sorry. Up badly. Can you hear me?
Sorry, you're breaking up, Charles. I don't know if you're moving or whatever, but you're breaking up.
Unfortunately, I do get that. I don't know how to change it, James. Can you hear me now?
No, we haven't got a great signal, unfortunately.
Have you got?
Yeah, that's better. What I just want to ask you, and this is
I wasn't moving. Unfortunately, I'm in a bad signal. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, much better. You're perfect.
You're coming in.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Now, I just want to ask you something. Sit still and don't move. I just want to ask you something. Surely, okay, once we have one company, because I think that's the first step forward. The first move on the chessboard is to get it into one company. Surely that company then says, okay, we've got to have a marketing operation, but the marketing operation cannot exist on the way it has been existing in the past, where you have a whole lot of editors writing whatever they like. What you've got to have is you've got to be able to disseminate information with one voice, okay? So, and the only way to disseminate information with one voice is that you have one website which disseminates that information through your marketing arm. And Teletrack has got to be involved in your marketing arm because they are your television viewership.
Yeah, we've seen, again, Japan and Hong Kong are brilliant. Their websites, their TVs are there. I've never seen the Green Channel, but I'm sure if you ask, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You're perfect. Talk.
Okay. I'm sure if you ask Michael Roberts and Lyle Hurts, and I know Billy Steele told me, Billy Steele went to Japan twice, and he just came back raving. Their television channels are brilliant, and everything is done to a timetable, like it actually used to be with Teletrack. We used to know at 8 o'clock on a certain evening we'd get some, the July preview. But now you switch on and you're in the middle of a race from Parks, and it's a nightmare. It's completely, it has no cohesion at all. So you need a very, 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 you need the right person in charge of Teletrack, somebody again with deep knowledge of racing and who's aware of what's happening around the world as well as just here, because the global horse racing is so interconnected. I mean, people are interested not just in the Met and the July. They want to know who's winning the Grade 1 races of the world and how our horses link to theirs pedigree-wise and what it means to us. So you need a very, very, very good TV station.
But you need presenters that are that interested as well, that know about these things. Now, a lot of the presenters really fall short, because when you're going to go over on Teletrack to the Arc de Triomphe or to any of the other races that we do show, and we show a lot of really good races, and we have fun watching them. The whole of Ascot we watch. You've got presenters that are able to tell you a preamble leading into that race, so that they know something about it. It's no good just saying, we're going to Ascot now for race 6. That does not help you.
Absolutely. It has to be concise, precise, and expert, insightful. So, and I often find in England sometimes they use people that are good. But, James, Michael Roberts told me about, in England they have a profession of people known as hawks. And this is very important, because right now, as we sit here, you and I know they can't afford to start trials immediately. But in England, Tony, who was it? The top journalist there told me that there are more hawks, professional hawks in England than there are anyone else in the sport. And these are people who watch work in the morning and stand and confer with the trainers while they're watching them. Because the trainers often say to them, well, how do you think the horse worked today? And report daily on the workouts. Yes. So I just wanted to add that as a profession that we should start to develop in this country, is that people are watching the workouts daily and get paid a salary for adding to your single website. Just a short note on, so Vardy worked this morning and he went 4 furlongs in the sand and he was pulling hard at the end and he was striding out beautifully. Finished. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
daily for all horses.
Okay, let me throw you the curveball. Why don't you because with digital media today and cell phones and the way they work and how easy it is to take pictures, why don't you throw it into the court of the trainers and say to the trainers, listen, give us footage. You've got horses working. Send us some footage. We will have a show on Teletrack that actually shows these horses working, and you can make a comment on it. It's going to be good marketing for you as a business, okay, that you're prepared to be open and outspoken about and tell the people what's going on. And then people are going to see the visuals. It's so easy to take a picture, download it or upload it, whatever you load it, and send it through to the studio. And then you have someone in the studio putting that all together. Doesn't that make sense?
A lot of sense. And at the same time, links it to the horse's CD on your Thoroughpedia has got a facility where you can link. You can just keep adding from the day the horse is born to the day the horse dies.
Well, Charles, now you mentioned that, and that really piqued my interest, because that's what I've been saying since my days with Equine Hub. That's what we intended to do with Equine Hub. Have the foal born. Have the stud farm send a picture through of the foal being born. Every foal, they can send a picture through. And you put it on the profile. That mare's profile then has that foal being born, okay? And that mare has a profile that is accessible to everyone on this planet, not only South Africa, for free. So you go onto that profile, and then 3 months later, they send you another picture or whatever, and then they send you copies of his vaccination that have been done. And all those things go onto the horse's passport, as it were. It's a digital passport in front of you.
which is almost what Hong Kong do. Hong Kong are brilliant. I mean, they have daily updates on every single horse. So it's with technology today. People have said to me, well, Japan and Hong Kong are first world countries. They're not using any different technology to the technology we have.
Of course
and
not.
The technology is so good now. It's a matter of using the technology to achieve anything you want to achieve.
Well, the point.
So the excuse that we third world is a joke. James, can I make a point? Once the Titanic hit the iceberg in the middle 90s, all we've ever seen is that people have started arguing and discussing among themselves as to what time the band is playing, what tunes that they must play. We've never seen people say, Christ, let's go and fix the bloody hole in the Titanic. Let's go and fix the hole down there and stop the water coming in. They carry on top of the deck while the ship is sinking. Now, what we're talking about now is such a simple solution, James. It's not easy to do. You need people. You need expert people. And you need it to be coordinated and connected. But it's not a difficult job. It's what we're seeing all around us. That's what the internet is. It's an extension of the human brain and nervous system. What we have done with the internet is to mimic the peripheral nervous system of all mammals, a brain with neural network going everywhere and connecting everything to everything and driving the body forward, the mammal forward. Now, everything you've mentioned now fits into that concept. Our whole existence, our moods, our hormonal excretions, our everything are controlled by our nervous system, James.
Yeah.
Our beliefs, everything. So all I'm trying to say to you is that we have such incredible technology available to everybody today and all young people. And the greatest portion of the market today are millennials, Gen X's and Gen Z's. That's people younger than 35. They are the majority of the market. And, I demoed Therapedia to Masayuki Gota, who is one of my heroes in the sport. And he put his hand on my arm.
Who is he? Just tell me who he is. No one knows who he is. Tell us who he is.
Masayuki Gota was a board member of the JRA when I don't know how old he is now. He's now the chairman of the JRA, but he was one of the board who were the architects of the whole rebuild of the sport of horse racing basically on the planet by recognizing, and I can actually quote something verbatim that he said, a speech that he made in New York in 1995. He said, to understand our position over this matter, you must understand a very basic philosophy of how the JRA considers racing. We look at racing as a business. That business generates revenues from the fans. They are our consumers. Where does the prize money come from? The consumer pays for it. Our first duty, therefore, if we are to run a successful business, is to make our consumers happy so that they keep coming back to do business with us. It is the right of the fan to be the first to be considered. Everything else is secondary. The fans are where we must look to grow our business, not the owners, not the breeders. I know this may be difficult to understand where there's a tradition to give all parts of racing an equal say, but for us in Japan, it is simple business logic. If we are successful in our dealings with the consumer, the handle, that's the total turnover, goes up. The prize money goes up. Everyone is happy. If we are not successful with the consumer, we go out of business. And we have just gone out of business because we were not successful in our dealings with the consumer. Finished. Well, so now we have to do everything we can to create a strong communion with the man in the street. It's not We've got the solutions. They're simple. The solutions are simple, but it's not going to be easy. We're going to have to work very hard at it. And we can't ever drop our guard. There's no more anything that creates distrust. That has to go. As you know, in Japan, if you have a license from the JRA, which is like the jockey club here, I suppose, you are not allowed to bet. That means trainers, jockeys, assistant trainers, grooms, If you have a license, you do not bet. But it doesn't matter, because with that policy, they have such massive stake money. Michael Roberts told me when he won the Japan Cup on Lando, the groom's check was R1 million. Back then, it was equivalent to R1 million. So if grooms can earn huge money because the prize money is huge, that's fine. They don't want to bet and be seen as creating a sleazy image by trading with inside information. If we don't get that right, we may as well not open up again.
Well, okay. So we understand everything that you've said. Now let's take another step down the road and see where we go as far as putting all this information together. You've got to have someone that's prepared to drive an information center, which is your brain of horse racing. That information center, from what you've told me, has got to have everything about that horse from the moment that it was born until the moment it leaves racing, and then even after it leaves racing, because you want to include those people that are now taking horses and giving them second homes and third homes as dressage horses, polo ponies and whatever, and you want them to be able to upload information on that horse onto your site, because all of that's interesting. And people who backed a horse would like to know a whole timeline of that horse, including it walking through a sales ring when it gets sold, either as a yearling or... It's so easy to do, Charles. It's not difficult. It's not rocket science.
No, well, we've done it, James. We've created it. Unfortunately, when I say on shoestrings, I'm terribly grateful, very grateful to people who along the way have seen the vision and have made contributions. I started in 1980. I went to see Mr. Oppenheimer, and the first thing was to do something in print every year, and he made a contribution. Since then, Shirley Pfeiffer very kindly made a very big contribution. Paul Asherson and Billy Steele and the owners and trainers, as well as the Western Cape Greeners and Lionel Cohn, they also contributed. Then, unfortunately, it got torpedoed by the board of the South African Turf Club. For people who told me that
let's stop there. Okay, I want to stop there because I think this is a very important point to take forward. Yeah. You were torpedoed by a racing body, okay? That is not acceptable in my view, okay? Yeah. Anyone that has got a smidgen of information that can help racing should be lauded and applauded, not torpedoed.
Of course. But, again, all I heard from the board was you can't put Seat Cottage in your pick six, so we're not interested in anything more than 4 seasons back. I said to them, culture trumps strategy and everything in life. And if you don't have a culture, you don't have any followers. But you're talking, James, the world is so changed. It's so different. Millennials and Gen Xers aren't interested. And that's what Masayuki Goto said to me when I demoed this thing. He said, I think the way you hyperlinked everything and it connects, it's brilliant, he said. And he said, if you don't have that, young people aren't interested today. Because they are so empowered by the internet that if you don't empower them, they're not interested in you. So that's the simple logic.
Exactly. So what you've got to do is make as much information available on each horse, trainer, jockey, the players, all the players. Doesn't matter. Even if you include the grooms, assistant trainers, whatever. It's easy to do on websites. It's easy to set up. All you've got to do is get the information.
We've set it up. It's been, look, there are various bits of code to improve the user interface that we just don't have the money to do it, but we know exactly what needs to be done. But, every group can have a CV on there. You include everybody.
Exactly.
James, look at a chart of the nervous system. There's a brain, and then there's this maze of neural network going throughout the body, connecting your little right toe to your left thumb, to your right eye. Everything is connected, James. It's cohesively connected. and information is flowing around your body at 1 billion. You have no idea how much information you have going on inside you, even while you're sleeping. And if that breaks down, your health breaks down. And what has happened to us is we've gone out of business. Master Yuki says, do this or die. We didn't do it, we died. They're doing it, they're doing very well. Hong Kong are doing it, they're doing well. That guy, Gareth, who was a commentator here, I heard him interviewed. He said, the name of the game in Singapore is transparency. When transparency is timeless information about everything. Yeah. That's what transparency is. Everything, not just what you want to give them and keep some back for yourself. David Payne told me that in Australia, he gets 6 to 8 calls a day from the press. At least 6 to 8 calls. And he said, you better answer them in Australia because the press don't play with you there. You better give the press what you need or you're not going to be in business. There is an understanding there that information drives a mind game. And we are or we can be a mindless gamble, which is what Phumelela reduced us to.
Okay, so now let's just talk further, because I think you've made the point. Okay, for us to progress, we not only need one company. That's the first step. Okay, the second step is that we need the information made available. That we think we can do. Okay, so now we've got to step 2. Let's go on from there. How do we fund this information? Because it's not going to cost nothing. You've done it all your life for nothing, and many others have too, have done these things for nothing. Form Grids is another one, and we've spoken to him at length, okay, David Safi. The point is that you have then got to start saying, whatever income streams we're generating through this business, certain amount has got to be set aside for our brain, which is our marketing arm.
It's a marketing expense. Yeah. That's what it is.
And certain amounts got to be set aside for stakes payments, because you've got to pay stakes, okay? And then the rest has got to be distributed in the best possible ways that we can. At the moment, we're just actually messing it up.
Do you know what percentage Samsung, Apple, and the rest of spend on our research and development every year?
I think of their income.
Like 10% of their turnover.
Yeah.
So that they can stay competitive and move ahead. This is a marketing expense. It's a research and development. It's a culture building expense. You've got to do it. But at the same time, you can have an index on there where people can choose to pay to take something that they want to put on. So Wikipedia deliberately doesn't have advertisements cluttering up the place. And YouTube and Google have done, well, not so much Google, but YouTube, I'm afraid, does have all these ads, and it makes it unpleasant to use at times. So you can create a Yellow Pages index,
correct,
which can link to your search panel. So I type in James Goodman, we go to his CV, and we get offered a button, Yellow Pages. And there we have what James Goodman wants to say about, or Coolmore Stud, or Claiborne Stud. So you allow people in a separate Yellow Pages index to pay for something.
Correct.
And you can make it very affordable, 50 Rand a month. I promise you, if it's a world-class thing, you'll have a lot of people paying 50 Rand a month to add material that they'd like to be there. That's not picked up in the normal flow of business. I
can expand on that, because what you want to do is you want to have it into a racing Yellow Pages, which is worldwide. So anyone can subscribe to it. And on top of that, this is what we wanted to do with Equine Hub, was that anyone can put their information there. They pay to put the information there too. And it's when it's big and powerful enough, every farrier will have his name there. Every veterinary surgeon, every single person will have their name there. Yeah. And it will be like John Freeman's book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Do you remember the Who's Who of Racing, that book that came out about six volumes?
Yeah.
That was very extensive. I have got all of them, and it's very interesting to go back and think. But you can say to someone, look, for 100 Rand a month or $10 or whatever it is, and you can have this Yellow Page index section, and you can put on there what you want to put on there.
Yeah.
And I'm quite sure that when something like that is connected to an absolutely world-class central brain, that people will pay that money. But, the JRA drives turnover and therefore prize money by doing what we're talking about now. Hong Kong does exactly the same. Hong Kong, there's an interview in the New York Times with Mr. Engelbert Regis. It was about a year ago.
Winfred, yeah.
And he said, he was asked a question, why do you make so much free data? He said, our customers see racing as a mind game. I'm quoting him now.
Yeah.
And they need information. We make this freely available and in different presentation forms because different generations have different ways of how they process information. All the horses are trained and under controlled.
Yeah, the controlled regimen. Yeah.
I'm sorry, the photocopy is bad. The veterinary data, training data, everything we have, we make available for our customers.
Great.
Every meeting, we have 800,000 to 900,000 people searching for data up to 3 hours at a time. I mean, James, I get so frustrated when I see people running around on the deck of the Titanic deciding when the band's going to play which tune at what time.
Charles, we understand, and this is the one thing I do understand about you. You would like us to model on Hong Kong or Japan. In a real world, it might not be possible to do that.
I've got to stop you there. This concept does not come from Hong Kong. This concept, I've studied the science of rooting interest and the science of perceptual bias and cognitive science. This actually all comes from cognitive science. This is the science of how to create the right perception and bring the observer to the act of observing with the correct personal perception. There's a science to this, James, and Hong Kong and Japan understand the science. It's simple business logic. It's not, listen, we're still living in South Africa under what I call the Eddie and the two Charlies mindset. Now, Eddie Derby and Charles Bunbury, Lord Derby and Charles II, they used to meet on the Newmarket Hill and race their very, very special running horses they had bred. Who put up the prize money? Eddie and Charlie.
Yeah, they bet against each other, basically.
King Charles threw in a silver plate. But we're getting back to a situation where people who want to breed and own horses are going to put up their own prize money.
Yeah.
It was actually at the end of Charles II's reign, he says, listen, let's start putting on the heath and let's create a closed-in track and let the public in and come and bet with the professional bettors and give us a percentage of that so we don't have to put up prize money. So, if we want to live in the Eddie and Charlie mindset, well, we're getting there fast. There will always be people who want to breed and
exactly. Who saved us? The Oppenheimers have saved racing, basically, to go forward to the next step. The point being is that there are brains out there, and certainly your brain is one of the best around, that can help lead this industry to the next step. And there's only one way you're going to go there. We're going to go and have to stand on people's toes and aggravate people who've been in charge and made a bugger up by telling them where they made a mess, okay, and telling them to take the back door out of here, and let's now put this business right. I don't think I'm young enough, and I don't think you're young enough to be able to do it, but we can set the whole thing in motion.
Yeah, right. James, let's look at the grand dames of racing. The ones are Edith Owenstein, Shirley Pfeiffer, Gaynor Rupert, Mary Slack, Sabine Plattner. Those are the five that come to mind quick. I don't think one of them has ever asked, I can assure you, asked a trainer to set a horse up for a betting coup.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, many of their horses have been used for betting coups by trainers. They're not interested. They love the sport. They want to breed a good horse, go out there and prove that their horse is better than their competitor's horse. They're not interested in they might have tote bets here and there, but they don't set up these coups. They don't approve of them at all. I once asked Chris Van Niekerk, he'll tell you, came to my office, and I asked him, the first question I always ask big players. Do you bet? He says, no, I never bet. He said, my bet is buying the horse. I'm not interested in betting.
Right.
So it's not the owner, the big owners, the big patrons of racing, the people without whom we wouldn't have racing. It's a handful of punting trainers, many of whom were ex-jockeys and learned this bad habit somewhere else, or use the excuse, I can't survive if I don't do this. What they don't, every time they do it, they're destroying their own business.
Exactly. It's a bad habit. Exactly as you put it, it's a bad habit. Okay. And there's nothing better than having a bet on a horse. We all love to have a few rand on a horse that wins. You won money on court day. I won money on court day, as we discussed last week. That hooked us. So we're always going to have a bet. But the whole thing about the secrecy has got to go. Yeah. And there's only one way it's got to go. The information has got to be made available. And you'll find that there are trainers out there, there's stables out there that make a real effort to give information away. I can tell you that I did a preview for Kimberley for a couple of months before they closed it down. And that's why I saw how valuable people like Cliffy Miller and Tini Prinsloo and these guys were, and Zietsman Oosthuizen. I mean, they told you exactly what they thought of their horses. And they were pretty accurate. Cliffy Miller was very, very accurate. When he said he liked a horse, he liked it, and it ran very well. I've seen trainers tell me, or certainly tell the publications, we'll need the run. And the horse goes and shortens in the betting and runs very, very close. Now, it doesn't shorten for fun, and it doesn't shorten because it will need the run. So that is wrong, and that's a perception that's got to go immediately. And the new dispensation, as far as I'm concerned, that's got to go, and I think that you agree.
Yeah. James, let me tell you something about your nervous system. If any one of your senses sees certain information, it zaps it to the brain, which processes it and makes decisions, send out hormone stuff. It's fine to have trainers and things wanting to feed in, and most of them do because they understand what you're saying. But you've got to have a systemized flow of that information through a neural network into a central brain, then feeds it out to the whole planet, to anybody on Earth who wants it. And it's the efficiency with which you handle that information that you can change perceptions. Now, you might do a thing on and speak to all these trainers and have 5,000 people on your side. I'm talking about 6-7 billion people. By a little search panel being able to have this information and knowing it's there, and all I have to do is type in the name of the horses in the first race and bang, 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 bang. They know, and this is what Michael Roberts once said to me. He said, the owners and trainers and the public in Japan, any member of the public knows more about the horses than the owners and trainers do because they have such incredible information processing. Yeah. And I'm sure Lyle Lutsen will tell you the same about Hong Kong.
Okay. So
we've got to have a proper information center, and it's got to be manned by top people and a marketing czar who understands that marketing is nothing but perception management.
Okay.
Sorry.
I agree with you. And the point is that we've now harped on for it, basically the whole show. What you're saying in a nutshell is so simple and so organized and so easy to do if you put the right people in charge. What I'd like to say to you is, where are the weaknesses in South African racing going forward? Obviously, tote turnover is a huge problem. We've got to work on them, okay? And we've got to come to agreements with bookmakers and people who are running the information as to making the most of whatever money is bet on the horses. How do we go about that?
The open bet has to go, James, and the bookmakers have to understand. It's not fair that they don't contribute the same percentage from whatever open bets they take to racing as the tote does. It's just not right. And they must know that. I mean, every cent that goes onto a pool type bet, like an exotic bet, must generate a percentage to fund racing. Correct. So if bookmakers are running open bets and not paying racing, only paying racing out on winning bets, that's just not right. And that has got to be stopped. So that is another source of now. But I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the potential. The 59 million people in South Africa, the 58.9 million who don't want to have anything to do with us. James, it's a crisis of credibility and trust, and it is massive, and it can only be changed through perception management.
Okay,
in other words,
we understand that, but I want to just try and get a blueprint from you before we close off today, because you really have made the point. Okay,
yeah, James, Therapedia, it is been built with over 500,000 man-hours of research. Johan and I probably put our whole lives in there, but we've employed a lot of people along the way with the financial assistance of certain patrons in the sport. There's 500,000 man-hours back in there. It's been very carefully designed, but we, form organization, can't tell the industry what to do. We need those new leaders that are going to come forward to appreciate what I'm sure they do, and I know a man like Charles Savage and Bjorn Smith, who I've chatted to, not for long, but I think I can see they fully understand. And we just need new leadership. When again, I've got to say this, James, because I wrote letters to the NHRA about the shocking race figure system that they're calling ratings, and to please stop telling the public that these are ratings with race figures. They didn't even bother to reply to me. Yeah. I wrote letters to Rion Duplessis. He wrote a letter back saying to me, Mr. Faull, if you want to pay for transparency in trials, you're welcome to do it, but it'll cost 20 million a year and we don't have money to do it. And they paid themselves out performance bonuses that year.
Correct.
James, when you're standing on the deck of the Titanic, the main concern is not to get the band to play a tune you like.
Okay. Let's understand what you've said, and I know, Charles, you have banged on every door. Let's move forward, okay, and say we get what we need. We get the go-ahead. We get one company. Yes. We end up going. Yes. What would it take for you, Charles Faull, and Therapedia and the Form organization to join in? What if I said to you, Charles, okay, Charles, let's now put this together. We like what you say. What's it going to take us? You tell us. I want a blueprint from you. What it's going to take? Yeah.
We've built this. I call it. You couldn't build it for 100.
Let's save the.
I just want to mention what
we saved the Titanic, Charles. We saved the Titanic. Okay, the Titanic's not sinking. We're filling the hole. What are you going to do?
I want to mention names like Michael Javert, who gave us a huge support. Tony George, who bailed us out when we got torpedoed, who helped us go forward. And of course, in recent years, in the last 2-3 years, since things started getting difficult again, I went to Drakenstein. And I said to Gaynor, listen, this is where we stand. If I don't have one person to help you, I'm afraid we're going to hit the wall. And she very kindly stepped up and said, and she employed Robin Lowe to help us. So we've been held together by pieces of string. We are very happily going to say to the industry, we will give you this facility in exchange, obviously, for some kind of a contract to carry on doing what we're doing. But we're not asking them for 100 million rand. We're saying it's built. Now we need you to get in behind with your financial muscle. And we have got top people out there, James.
That's the question I wanted to ask you, Charles. I've been trying to ask you, okay? What would it take? What would it take? Just wait. What would it take the industry to get you to build what we've talked about now for the last 3/4 of an hour? What would it take? Would you give them the operation and say to them, we want a 10-year management fee or whatever it is, renewable another 10 years, and we will fix it?
Yes. We would need them to bring in. It needs to be part of a information center.
Correct.
We need to have that marketing czar. We need those people driving. It will need 1 or 2 more staff, but it will need more people. And it will need people out in the field. As I've said to you, Andrew Bond, Michelle Wing, Fiona, and there are many, many other young people who would love to contribute. I mean, Lyle Hulson told me his girlfriend, Hannah, would love to get involved. She's a work writer, she understands. There's people like you, James, with an enormous amount of knowledge and skill. I look at Robin Bust and say, Robin, this is where your talents must be invested, because he has a huge knowledge of the sport. There are so many talents, but they're all over the place, trying to do their own little things, falling and stumbling along. But we need cohesion. We need a leader now, James. We have, in my time in racing, we have never had leadership. And this is leadership time. We need a body, we need a leader. And there are people there in Mary Oppenheimer's team that have got leadership skills and that will understand this needs leadership. I mean, we are ready to contribute. I'm going to die. I want to die with a smile on my face, knowing that racing hasn't come to the end in South Africa. There's knowing John and I know we'll never get back what we've put in here. I mean, Form has put tens of millions of money and hundreds of thousands of hours of work. We're not looking for the money. What I want to see is racing working like it does in Hong Kong and Japan. Well, I need to prove that point.
There's only one way it's going to happen. Exactly what we have discussed, and that's why I wanted to discuss this with you. And I think we've come to the end of it, because you have mentioned the Titanic 4 times, and that's enough. Okay. What has got to happen, and this is, in my humble opinion, is the right way, is that your organization, have got to be encompassed in the racing industry, the go forward plan, to produce the brain for the central nervous system so that everyone can get the information. And I'm sure there are people, and I'm certainly prepared to help. There are people out there who think alike and think like you do, and they're young marketing gurus who will be out there being able to tell us exactly the right way to do it. But you have the brain. We need someone to keep that brain running and enlarge on it and grow it into the best marketing arm in racing in the world. And it's possible to do. We have a few things that are really, really good for us. One, we have a reasonable product. We have very, very competitive racing with good, nice horses, good riders, good trainers, and good form books, if you allow them to be good. And secondly, we fall into a very, very good time slot as far as the universe is concerned. Between 12 and 5 at our time of the morning is either the early morning somewhere else or the late evening. So we have a racing product that we can sell, and that's why we've been able to sell it in the past. Let's put this together, Charles. I love what you say. I'm sure everyone agrees with you, and I love your blueprint.
Look, James, I'm hanging on for dear life here that the thing can happen. I've had to face quite bad health for the last 5 years, but I've managed to keep going because I'm determined not to let the sport I gave my life to collapse around me. And this is, James, this is the only way to do it. It now needs leadership. It needs the right people. And I'm sorry, I'm harping and I'm going on, but with the right leadership, we can fly. I said we can be the next Hong Kong. We gave South Africa the best talent register in the world. Well, we're now ready. Those were barrier trials for me, learning how to do that. We are now ready to give the world the best information, online information resource that is. We've also got, thoughts of asking Hong Kong to come in and Japan to come in, and that's the next step. But I mean, we need to first get South Africa unified in a cohesive information network, and then move forward from there. And as I say, we need leadership, and there are people there, top people, who are working hard to disrupt them.
There are, but those leaders need to understand that there are people out there like yourself, and that's why I've been very pleased to be able to chat you through this whole thing, who really need to be encompassed and involved in what goes forward. I'm going to call it a day there, and I'm going to say, because we've been an hour now, and that's about long enough. Thank you so much.
One more time. Did I mention Michael Javits?
Yes, you did. You did mention. You've mentioned all the people that need to be mentioned, and I'm very pleased you have, because they have done an admirable job with finance, which is what we all need to live. You need to have money, and those people have money that they're able to spread around and use for people like yourselves to be able to put something on the table that is really viable and workable. And what you've told us in these 2 shows has been to me an eye-opener. You're an incredible man. You've been an incredible servant to this industry, and hopefully someone's going to take your company and run with it and make it into the brain of racing in the future. That's what be my wish.
Well, that's very kind of you, James, and I'd like to think it's going to happen. And I'd like to think that one day we will be the next Hong Kong, because we've got such great horsemen and stud farms, and we have the most amazing.
We've got everything.
We've got everything, James. Absolutely everything.
We've even got people who are prepared to stick their neck out and talk about these things. Well done. I admire you. Fantastic. What you've done is uncountable as far as money is concerned in this universe. And as far as I'm concerned, I just want to end it, because I must end it. Otherwise, you and I can talk forever. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being on the show, and thank you for giving us your information. I think you're an amazing man, and long may you live to see this dream come true. And that's what I'd like to say.
James, thank you for your interest, and thank you for the exposure. Thank you very much.
Enjoy, Charles. Have a great weekend, and I'm sure everyone out there will love the show like they did last week. You've been a pleasure having on the show, and long may you carry on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Charles Faull, ladies and gentlemen. And what can I say? I mean, here's a guy who just actually has it. I know that he likes to go on about certain aspects, but he has the knowledge. Charles Faull, is one of the jewels, probably the most important jewel that we've overlooked in the last 20 years of 30 years of racing, with his organization, his brain, his ability. But you know why? Because he annoys people, because he says what he thinks. Unfortunately, for this industry to move forward, you're going to have to encompass these thoughts, because these are the thoughts that are going to get us forward and not take us backwards. What's happened in 30 years is horrifying to me. It's horrifying to people like Charles Faull. We have got to be able to stand up and put it right. Thank you, Charles. And thank you to all of you for watching the show. Just a quick answer to Thomas Kubeka. The number cloth system that's run in KwaZulu-Natal is a Hollywood initiative. They like it because that's what happened in America. Unfortunately, America does not race on the same planet that we race on. We have handicapping as our major source of racing, and that is very important. And I tried to explain it to Devon Heifer. It's very important to actually have the horses in ability or merit rating order, and certainly from best to worst, from top to bottom, as far as the numbers are concerned. As far as your draw is concerned, you can have fancy number cloths, saddle cloths that are different colors. That's perfect as far as your draws are concerned. Change the numbers. That's what I've told them, but they don't like it. And no one listens, and that's the problem that Charles Faull and everyone else has had. Thank you so much, and thanks to all of you for joining us. It's really been fun, and I really love what Charles has had to say. And I know we can put it together, because we did a lot of research with Equine Hub to be able to do this. It can work, and Charles Faull is the right person to talk to. Have a great weekend. I will be up with Turfentine tomorrow morning, and Greyville on Sunday, or KwaZulu-Natal Racing on Sunday. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and catch all the updates.